Today we're going to be looking at one of our all-time favorite strollers, the Babyjogger City Elite. Babyjogger's been around since 1984, and they have a number of decent strollers. But in my opinion, this one is the true star of the bunch. The one that outshines not only the rest of their own line, but really all the other three-wheel, front swivel wheel strollers on the market. The stats are as follows. The City Elite weighs in at 11.5 kilos. It has a max carrying capacity of 34 kilos, around 10 of which is in the shopping basket. It folds down to 85 by 70 by 40 centimeters. Note that this is with the wheels though, which are very easy to remove and make the stroller significantly smaller if you're concerned with space. A few notes on comfort for you and your child before we get into the mechanics. So the main thing about three-wheeled strollers is the facing. From a design standpoint, three-wheeled forward-facing stroller is, in my opinion, superior to reversible seat options because it's simpler. The highest point on a stroller is the handle, right? And the lowest point is the wheels. So with a forward-facing three-wheeler, manufacturers get to just suspend the seat from the frame. So what, you're probably asking? Well, the answer is that you get to avoid all the mechanics involved in a separate seat unit, and thus there's a lot less that can go wrong. And the seat can be a lot larger too, because it can extend arm to arm, and fit lower as well because you don't need a point for attaching a seat frame. Conversely, this also means that more can be done with the lower end of the stroller, which is why you often see a full-size 12-inch front wheel on three-wheelers. So then, comfort-wise, that is the first thing one needs to consider when looking at the City Elite. Can you handle only having reverse-facing options with the newborn bassinet and car seat? Meaning that your child will be facing forwards after around 9 months max. 6 if you don't use the car seat option, for most people, as this is usually when your kid starts trying to wobble himself up into a sitting position. For a lot of parents, this is a sacrifice, and probably that feeling is the only reason three-wheelers don't completely dominate the market. It's really less of a big deal than it's made to be, but still. If you can handle it though, then stick with us, because this is what you get for that trade-off. Comfort-wise, the City Elite has a lot of pluses. It has a huge seat with a great recline, it has a good canopy, it's lightweight, it folds small, and it's ridiculously easy to fold. In fact, it's my favorite fold on the market. Check it out. On the negative side, the shopping basket is a bit hard to access with the seat in recline. That's a general three-wheeler problem. And there is some general concern over tipping when you're parked on a bus and not holding the stroller. This problem is mainly a myth propagated by people who hang too much stuff from their handles. All strollers can tip over backwards if you hang too much stuff from your handle. I know this from over a decade of experience. But still, for safety's sake, if you're using a City Elite with a 4-year-old in full recline and your kid likes to scrunch himself up into the back of the seat, just hold the handle if you're on a bus. Driving-wise, the City Elite is a dream. This stroller will tolerate just about any terrain comfortably. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that its unparalleled drivability is actually the chief reason for the problems that do occasionally occur with this stroller. In a way, it's too good for its own good. It invites irresponsibility. So this leads us into the mechanics of the stroller. As I said, this stroller has great drivability because it has very large wheels and it's very terrain capable. One problem then that can occur with this stroller is that people use it in too harsh a manner. If you tend to hang a lot of stuff from the handle, you use it over a lot of bumpy terrain, and you're not a little bit careful with weight and stuff, you will start to have some problems. So we'll look at this top to bottom, and the weakest point is really on the top, and that is the handle. This is built of a relatively lightweight aluminum. It's not a bad construction material, but because of its, again, very capable driving ability, you're going to have a lot of stress put on metal. And the key stress does occur with the top handle section, which is divided into several areas that are screwed together. And the screw points can weaken, and if people aren't careful to check the screw points, in particular down here where the handle screws into the central mechanism, then the handle can have a tendency to break. Again, I'd like to stress that it's not built as a weakness. It's generally a matter of misuse, and really all the problems do occur on the top when they do occur. Now, I haven't seen a Babyjogger City Elite come into my workshop that was any less than 6 years old. So when we're talking about longevity and problems with this stroller, it's in an entirely different class than a lot of the strollers we generally discuss, where we're talking about problems that can occur after, 3 years. With the Babyjogger City Elite, I see ones that are on the road 10, 12-year-old models, at least 10-year-old models, that are still driving very, very well and don't have any sort of problems. Okay, moving down the stroller, we then get into the central locking mechanism, or what they call their easy fold system, which is actually patented. and it is again very easy to activate, and it's designed inside such that it snaps upright and all of the parts spread out properly from each other. Now, despite having such an easy to use mechanism, it's actually built of quite sturdy materials. Inside you'll find a pair of metal gear teeth discs and a little clover-shaped metal piece that rotates through it, which kind of allows for all of those different cross-sections from the central locking mechanism to spring out into place. And it is built of metal, so it's very sturdy in that respect. There are other Babyjogger models that are built on a simpler system and are not quite as sturdy, but the original Easy Fold mechanism is really, really a plus. Of course, anytime you have anything that is built to be this easy to use, it's going to be a little bit complex as far as mechanisms go, and it's going to have some small pieces. So on occasion there are problems, but again, I haven't seen a City Elite come in that is less than 6 years old, and if you treat it carefully, you won't get so many problems. And a lot of times it's simply an alignment issue. Whenever you have a central mechanism that has multiple complex parts, they can sometimes get out of alignment. Overall though, it's very, very sturdily constructed. I was very happy first time I opened this up and saw that the whole thing was built of metal, and the way it all works together is really emphasizes simplicity for what it's trying to accomplish. Okay, we're going to move on to looking at the back end, and one of the key features of the back end is of course the brake system. The City Elite originally had a foot brake system, which was a little bit simpler, had fewer problems. It did sometimes have problems, but fewer problems. In general, the handbrake system is not horrible, but I've always felt that having a static handbrake produces unnecessary complexity, and you do sometimes have issues with this brake system, in particular because the brake element activated in the middle sends these pins all the way out into the wheels, and there's a long series of shafts and springs involved in getting the pin to eventually go in the wheel. So you can have issues with rust and grit, and definitely a need for lubrication. It doesn't mean it's a bad system, and it has been improved over the years. A lot of elements of the brake system, in particular the wheel elements of the brake system, have been improved over the years, but still, it still does have a lot of complexity. That being said, if you do have problems with the brake system, it's one of those supplemental parts that you can get easily from Babyjogger and actually install yourself, because they will sell you an entire back frame and brake handle just because you have a problem with, the brake cable. Okay, that's a bit of a waste, but at the same time, it's easier for you as the end user of the stroller. Looking at the back end in other ways, I would note that there is no inbuilt suspension units. Now, strangely, this doesn't mean that the stroller feels like it has a lack of suspension. Normally, if you've seen some of my other videos, then you would think that this could not be possible, because I'm big on suspension units. I think it's very important for strollers to have adequate suspension, and yet when you're using the stroller, it functions quite well on terrain without any sorts of large springs. And my feeling on this is that the actual suspension comes from the shape of the chassis, and a lot of that added need for suspension or added pressure in order to keep the stroller functioning on terrain is actually added stress put on the handle, which is again why it's important not to misuse this stroller. It's not a jogging stroller, for example. It is an all-terrain stroller. It's very good outdoors, it's very good on terrain, but it's not meant to have more weight than is advertised for it, and it's certainly not a jogging stroller. They have other models that are for jogging. Okay, looking at the front end of the stroller, I'd like to point out that it has a decent swivel lock mechanism. It does require some lubrication in order to keep it functioning properly, but it's good in terms of how it activates. You just turn this little trigger to the side and a pin pops down, and the whole system is built quite sturdily. In addition, the way the fork locks on is quite intelligent. So you have the axle popping out of this into here, and you have a metal ring. And this, the combination of the metal ring and the axle on the chassis as opposed to the wheel, it creates a certain stability, and you tend not to have any problems where the axle is actually widening out the shaft or the tube where it slots into. This axle does on occasion loosen, but it's quite easy to fix, and they've done things to the stroller and to the design of this in order to make it easy. So there's a hole drilled through the axle so that you have an easy ability to stick a metal pin in there and use it to turn, and you have a lock nut on the inside there, and that's it. And so when this axle tends to weaken, it's quite easy to fix. So the front end is definitely built for durability and for withstanding some amount of stress from terrain. Also has quite good suspension on the front end built into the fork itself. So Between that and the shape of the stroller and the extra added stress is going to be going on the handle, as I mentioned, it does have sufficient suspension for dealing with terrain, even though it doesn't have a large suspension unit on the back end. Front end, again, built very, very sturdily, tend not to have a lot of problems, and the ones you do are quite easy to fix. We do have a few videos on our website on how to deal with general problems with the front frame and front wheel, but again, it's not problems that tend to occur that often. Lastly, I'd like to make a few notes just on the wheels in general. They are foam-filled tires. The tires are of a good quality, so that's the best setup as far as tires are concerned, in my opinion. Whenever you have a good tire that's filled with foam, of course you lose a little bit of suspension from not having that air-filledness, but when it's done properly, it works well. It works well with the Bugaboo Chameleon, it works well here as well. You also tend not to have issues with the ball bearings on this model. The way everything is set up and the ball bearings are fit onto the stroller, I actually have never had to replace any sort of ball bearings. You used to have some problems, so if you're looking at used models, there are some older City Elites that had problems with the brake element on the wheels, as I've said, because the teeth in between the holes were too thin and they would break. That has been fixed. It was fixed several years ago. So we're talking about really old models. If you're looking at buying a used one and you're concerned about this, you can leave a comment below. I also like the way the axle slots into the whole thing. The locking mechanism is not within the axle, which you see on a lot of terrain type strollers, and that causes problems when the axle bends. The axle is just one solid piece of steel, and the locking mechanism is here at the side. So if you did have any sort of wheels rusting in place issues, it would be a lot easier to get the wheel off and deal with those sorts of problems. I actually have, again, not ever seen any sort of problems where the wheel rusts in place on this model, and but even if it did, there is some inbuilt prevention against that. So the wheels, again, on this model, they get an A+. So then, is the Babyjogger City Elite the right stroller for you? Well, again, assuming you're okay with the forward facing, then I'd say yes. There are very few lifestyle reasons for not choosing this stroller. It's lightweight and compact, it's easy to fold, has a big seat, it's sturdy, and it's highly terrain capable. What more do you want? I mean, unless you need a jogging stroller or something extra small for traveling, for a daily stroller, in my opinion, most people would be a lot better off choosing a City Elite than making a style-oriented purchase like a Chameleon or a Priam. And if you treat it right, give it the proper lubrication, tighten the screws from time to time, don't overburden the handle and then go rock climbing with it, well, it'll last well. In any case, this was our review of the Babyjogger City Elite. We hope this video was interesting to you, and if it was, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us continue making videos in the future. Thank you.